Greetings, fellow traveler. I see you're heading to the north of Arafinn. Well, if that's the case, you might be better off knowing how to communicate in Hilduir, the language of the Dwarves. Don't worry, I'm not going to try to teach you all of the language's specialities in the brief time we've got, but knowing the basics will certainly help you on your journey. So let's take a little dive into the language. Hilduir is a solid and rough-sounding language, slightly reminiscent of Old German and Old Norse languages. Its name means language of the hills and mountains. In this video, we'll take a look at the basics. If you want to learn more about Hilduir, feel free to check out the Arafinn contour on Steam. You can find all sorts of information about the world there, including the Dwarven language. We've put the link in the description for you. Let's start with looking at the pronunciation. The vowels are pronounced the same as in German, for example. That means A is A, I is E, I is I, O is O, U is U, and last but not least, Y is Ü. It's worth mentioning that the sound that is representing Y in Hilduir does not occur in English, but it's basically like pronouncing E while rounding your lips. You're probably already doing it, so you see that it's actually easy to do. Things do get a little bit more complicated when it comes to the consonants, but I'll keep it as simple and short as possible. The C is pronounced like ch in the word chin. Note that this letter only appears in loanwords. The letter G is always hard as in gold, not soft as in jean. J is always pronounced like the English Y, like in yesterday. Q is pronounced ch, like in the German word Buch. This letter also only appears in loanwords. The R is rolled with the tip of the tongue like in the Scottish dialect. W is pronounced like V, X is pronounced like Z and Q simultaneously. Don't worry, this letter also only appears in loanwords. And Z is pronounced like sh in the word shield. It's another letter only appearing in loanwords. Now that we got the vowels and consonants out of the way, we can look at the stressing as well as accents. To make it easier to grasp, we'll take some real words in Hilduir as examples. In tarin, which translates to raise, the first syllable is stressed. If there are no accents in a word, that's always the case in Hilduir. Garin has an accent on the I, which is why in this case the second syllable is stressed. It translates to pot. If there are more than one accent in a word, the first accent marks the stressed syllable, whereas the second marks a long vowel. That's why in the case of the word sorandir, the first syllable is stressed and the I is marked to be a long vowel. It translates to winter. You're probably asking yourself what actually speaking full sentences in Hilduir might sound like. So to give you an example, here are a few sentences as well as their translations.
Mis tinalin bard evar var nur.
Hur frimbard.
Erinnil erin rinar dorgonir.
If you want to be a good dwarf, you obviously need to be able to use common curses. Fortunately, we can provide you with some of them too.
Rist bardan. Mis tinalin dur duondar. Tinalin gundar.
Now let's talk a little bit about some design decisions that were made in the creation process of Hilduir. While the rule set regarding grammar might be too complex to fit into a video like this, overall it's actually a quite simple and easy to learn language. Verbs and adjectives derive from the stem found in the according noun, so finding a specific word is quite easy if you already know its stem. Creating a simple system like this, for example, is on the one hand beneficial for us developers, because adding words to the dictionary becomes a more streamlined process. On the other hand, it's also easier and more rewarding for fans of Arafinn to actually learn how to speak Hilduir. And of course, from the lore perspective, having a language of which the principles lean towards efficiency makes perfect sense if you think about the nature of the dwarves. As you might have already thought to yourself when listening to the examples earlier, there are also some actual phrases that mirror the dwarven culture. Beards, for instance, play a central role in the dwarves' identity, which also shows in their language. Also, there are many more words for different kinds of mountains and stones than you can imagine. It's details like these that make the language work together with the world's lore, and thus it becomes much more believable. Well, that was quite a lot of information at once, wasn't it? Luckily, there's a resource for reading about all of the things we just talked about, and even more, as we actually just scratched the surface of Hilduir. In the Arafinn contour on Steam, you can learn all about it, and its specialities like the fact that there's no word for man in the language since it's synonymous with the word beard, and many more interesting facts. As mentioned before, the link's in the description. If you don't want to miss out on future Arafinn or Return to Nangadim related content, feel free to subscribe to the Sycoforge YouTube channel. Until next time.